Welcome back. I'm Top Music Attorney, and we have a great show planned for you today. As you know, we have been covering the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial. Now, if you happen to be catching this later, we hope you can join us, of course, live. But if you are watching later, I'm going to be sure to put chapters throughout our stream so that you have an opportunity just to kind of jump to what you want to see. Because today we are going to we're going to start with a couple of stories having to do with French Montana. He had a case of a dog bite, and we have resolution of that claim. We also had the Billboard Music Awards. So on the last stream, we had spent some time talking about Travis Scott and just giving an update on the fact that Travis Scott was going to do a performance at the Billboard, which is a big deal because Travis Scott has been kind of MIA for the last 6 months. And then, of course, we will go into a conversation having to do with Amber Heard's cross-examination. I don't know about you guys, but I was very much glued to my computer and my phone listening to this cross. There's a ton that we're going to unpack today. So if you are on this live stream, feel free to drop a comment, a question. All of it is feeding in to my computer as we are going through this. So let's get right into it. Hi guys, I'm Top Music Attorney Miss Krystle. I'm an entertainment attorney, public speaker, and creator of the Top Music Attorney School for artists and record labels. I'm the owner of Dukes Up Records, and most importantly, I'm an independent artist. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on those bell notifications so you don't miss my weekly videos giving you my best tips on the music business, industry news updates, and teaching you how to stay legally protected.
Let's go.
All right, guys, so we are live streaming right now on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Hello to everyone who is coming into the chat. I'm really excited to get into this conversation about Amber Heard, but we got a couple other things we are going to cover up front, starting with French Montana. So we've covered some dog bite cases on this channel before and, kind of tracking along of what happened. And in one instance, let's say the case kind of, didn't result in anything. There was settlement. Well, with French Montana, we have, some updates about what happened with not only one dog bite, but I'm going to bring in my show producer. You guys know him at this point, That Orko, here in a minute. We're going to kind of get into this because he did some deep dive into the fact that this dog actually has bitten a number of other people. Now, when it comes to dog bite cases, I'm not an expert, but I definitely have dealt with these cases before, and each state is different. And the way it kind of works is that, there's usually a certain amount of bites that the state will allow before the state basically forces you to put the dog down. My understanding is that this is actually one of 3 bites, but let's get into it. I'm going to bring in That Orko right now.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
All right. So on our little thumbnail right there, I guess we should have given some disclaimer. Ouch. That's
that's
crazy. Pretty rough.
That does not look good at all. That does not look good. And I got to tell you, when I first saw this story, it kind of touched close to home because before I went to producing music and, doing all the stuff that we do full time, I was a pool cleaner, a pool technician. And so I've literally have been in this situation where, I'm, cleaning a pool and the homeowners, don't leave the dogs out. And I've been, bitten a couple of times by dogs, in my leg or, even in my hand. But those were fortunately smaller dogs. I've been in situations where I have been very fearful and I had to hop a fence because, a big German Shepherd has gotten out. So this really hit close because I'm not trying to get bit by a dog. And if I get bit by a dog from like a homeowner, I'm suing. I don't care. I'm suing. Like, you got to be kidding me. Like, it's just not because I want money or I'm trying to take advantage of something or cool, I got a lawsuit, but like, dude, like, I'm not getting bit for your dumb dog. I love animals, but like, I'm not getting bit for your dog.
This is not a little dog either. Now, guys, on the last live stream, we had to call out a friend early on. I'm going to do it again. So here's our friend Big Boy. She's poopy emoji in the bed. I think Big Boy, especially with his username right there, maybe has something he's trying to, overcome. But I appreciate you being here, Big Boy. You're helping our algorithm. Drop those comments, everyone.
I think he's talking about Amber Heard. Everyone seems to be talking. He's not talking about
Well, when it comes to Amber Heard or me or anything, we're always going to call it out. Now, we're going to try to be nice on this live stream. We're going to get into all of the tea. We're going to get into our opinions about Amber Heard and her testimony. But as it relates to French Montana, so a California jury found French's German Shepherd Zane
Mhm.
was the culprit in the
Yep.
gnarly attack against Juan, and let's see his last name, Lomeli, and was sued back in 2018. So this goes to how long litigation
These process,
cases
yeah.
have a tendency to go on for. Obviously, even as it relates to Amber Heard's cross-examination, we're looking at video deposition testimony from 2018. So it's the same kind of thing. So this has been ongoing for a number of years, and the outcome is that French Montana lost, and he must pay nearly $130,000. Okay, so the way that this is kind of comprised, right, to your point, if you are on the job and you are injured, you have not only the damages related to having to go to the doctor, but you have other damages such as could you work during that time? And this particular plaintiff, was able to prove that he was not able to work for a substantial period of time. So he was successful in getting $40,000 on past economic loss, $60K on pain and suffering, and then another $30K for future pain and suffering. And so, that was just kind of the quick and short of it. You got to make sure that you are keeping your animals
Absolutely.
restricted to your yard. And like I said, I've dealt with this, and sometimes animals get out, and we are responsible as owners for what happens after that.
Yeah, and it was just kind of interesting too. Just going to the timeline that you were referencing, this is actually the first of so the Zane, French Montana's dog, has attacked 3 different people allegedly. The first one, this is we know the settlement for this is 130, but then there was another attack that didn't happen too long after that, and that was with a guy that was installing a security system around the house. He was also bit. And then another lawsuit was filed from something that happened in 2019 last year from a landscaper. So there's actually been 3 incidents now. So it's just it's crazy. So I don't know if any of this stuff isn't going to like being reported to the city, because I mean that's a lot of chances, and or if he's just settling the stuff outside and it's just kind of just being talked about. But it's
Yeah, and Joel, to your
scary.
question, so will the dog be put to sleep? Sometimes it's going to be required based on the state, right, and how many bites you can get away with, so to speak. But it sounds like, at least as of now, we've had at least 3 bites, and the dog's not been put down. Thankfully for the dog, not so good for everyone else who's been bitten. But anything
And I
else
mean,
comes from that.
the dog is like a trained, like kind of like attack dog too. So it's like I don't necessarily blame the dog. It's just kind of doing what it's trained to do. But it is, I mean, the responsibility lies solely for me on French Montana. Like, dude, like homeowner, dude, like
Well, and
keep
under
the
the
dog
law,
near
that's the
people
case
outside.
too, right? You are the owner, you're responsible. Now, of course, there's a moving target, and in fact, there are, certain species of animals that will be, in some states, considered, just to be not violent, but to have a more aggressive tendency, and
Like
that
a pit
sometimes
bull.
plays into it. Yeah, so in any case, yikes, and but we had to bring that update. So let's move on now to our next segment, which is the Billboard Music Awards, and just kind of doing a little recap. So from our last live stream, we had discussed, Travis Scott was performing, and this was kind of his first more major performance. He did have one previously, but he was coming back in a big way with a sign on from Billboard itself.
Right. Right. No, I mean, P. Diddy, he was the executive producer. He hosted the show. It was a weird thing. So I didn't necessarily watch the entire Billboard Awards live, but I watched it later on, like that night, and then just clips throughout the whatever. And I don't know. Like I love P. Diddy, so I'm gonna be real careful. I love P. Diddy. You know what I mean? Like part of my youth, Bad Boy Records, all that stuff. But like I really did not enjoy him as host. I thought that he was really doing a lot of just like self-promoting and talking about what he was kind of doing as kind of like, but you really wouldn't expect anything from else from Diddy. He's
I
always
liked
inserting himself on songs and making sure he's in the videos.
It was very consistent
Like
because
Suge
in the
said.
beginning, after his performance, he was kind of like, "Yeah, I'm a producer, I'm a performer, and he kind of rattled off his resume points, which again is totally fine. But he wants to make a point to let other people and everyone know that he's not just one thing, right? And because we know him as a producer.
And I don't know, it just everything that when he was trying to not seem scripted by saying I'm turning off the the teleprompter and all that, so and then and then making sure that he said something, curse words, dropping the n bomb, so like he was just it just seemed it seemed really forced. And then he did address the Will Smith thing, the Will Smith
Yeah, no, I
slap,
took
saying that
down the quote. He goes, "If you decide to jump on stage tonight, have your affairs in order." That's all he
yeah,
said, but we
if
know,
you're yeah,
we know what you
if
mean.
anybody out there was feeling froggy, I did think that was funny just because I like when people say, getting a little froggy. Uh, but other than that, there were some really cool performances. I thought the Lotto Big Energy performance was just like was super dope. That I love that sample of the Tom Tom Club, Genius of Love, that's in that song. It's such a classic sample that always seems to be a hit. I kind of want to look into that, sampling that for some of your music at some point because it's always a hit. We got to get the rights to that. Megan Thee Stallion was dope with the Plan B and the Sweetest Pie.
Yeah, and
And
I even you're
the
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, just one thing, just real, just occurred to me. I thought was really cool. So on Megan Thee Stallion's performance, especially during Plan B, she was self-editing herself. So a lot of times on these shows, they hit the
Mm.
mute button on them and just you can't hear anything. The music cuts out. It's just very jolting because there's just so many curse words and stuff. But when she was rapping, she would just pause and like she did it herself and she did it pretty flawlessly, and I was really impressed. A lot of people were commenting on her outfit just because she was wearing just basically looked just like tape over everything essentially. um
Yeah,
but
I'm
it's
gonna
kind
bring
of
this
how she
in just
always
so we have a little
dressed.
visual. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna show you guys a little bit. She's obviously wearing a bodysuit, right? So you can just see it's a skin colored bodysuit, and she looks fantastic. Now I'm not letting the audio play. I don't know if you want to take off the Billboard thing for a sec, but
yeah.
I'm not gonna let the audio play because we're gonna get shut down immediately. But she is fierce. She's fierce in her commitment and her confidence. I love the outfit. Everything for me was a win. Now, in this particular Vulture kind of breakdown of the highs and lows, they thought her performance was a little lacking. But I thought she did a great job. If you guys saw the performance, let me know what you think. And then you mentioned a second ago, let's go up to it. So Lato's performance, she came out with a big bang. We saw a lot of performances where musicians were just playing their guitars and kind of, laid back kind of thing. And she came out in full gear, love the outfit, very sassy. So that's what I like to see with kind of these bigger awards show. I want to see artists kind of putting on something that's a little more prepared. But that goes to, well, we talked about Travis Scott. So as far as Travis Scott and some other artists, what did you think?
I might be delayed because you got the screen up.
Oh, you're right. Okay, let me pause it. Go ahead before I play this. Hit it.
All right, so what was your question? I was distracted by the fact that I knew I was going to be delayed.
Thank you. See, that's why you're the show producer. So as it relates to Travis Scott's performance, right? So there's a lot of
Right.
anticipation. What were your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? And we'll play a few seconds for you guys in a minute.
Yeah, he performed Mafia, which is one of the songs that he's released since the whole Astroworld tragedy happened. It was cool, I guess. Like it's a weird thing. Like I don't hold as an artist, I don't hold anything against Travis Scott. You know what I mean? Like what happened was a tragedy. Like I've said in other streams and stuff that I don't hold him. I don't know. I just don't believe that he intended on that to happen. I don't think he wanted that to happen. I'm sure he feels bad. I don't like how he handled it. We'll see what happens when he be responsible. That all aside, so when I make these comments about Travis Scott, there's no like, something else fueling that other than what I watched. I'm not really that into Travis Scott's music. Like he's cool. Like I feel like his style is really like ASAP Rocky and like Kanye mix. Like he just really like I don't know. It's cool, and I like that his auto tune was mixed a little bit lower. Usually, it looks like it sounded like he was kind of working on his singing more from the other performances I've heard, and like so I think he's sounding better. He still has the auto tune on there, but like it doesn't seem like it's as
Yeah, and that's part
obnoxious.
of his. It's kind of
But
part of his
that's his
trademark
sound. So that's
sound.
and
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with people doing. I love Kanye's auto tune. I have no problem with it. It's just I haven't really caught on to the Travis Scott wave, so I'm not there. But as far as the visual goes, I thought it was interesting. I really didn't like the Twitter filter effect that was happening halfway through the where it was chopping them out. I really didn't like that. The performance I didn't really understand, and the song was okay, but like I don't know. I've heard the song before. It's okay, but like I said, I'm just not a Travis Scott guy. But I don't hold him back for
Yeah.
what
All
he's
right.
trying to do.
So good points. We're gonna bring this in now and just kind of watch it for a second so you get an idea of what we're talking about with these visuals. All right, here we go. All right, so we had kind of this performance with dancers slash models, right? So you don't see a lot of necessarily choreography, but you see him there. It's a beautiful set design. Whoever did this should get paid a lot of money. I'm sure that they did. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through this. Whoever did wardrobe for him, he's like a little polar bear. And you have this model that's kind of, I just skipped over, but she makes an appearance a few times. But then we go into what you referenced as kind of this filter effect. That was a little odd, I think, especially for the time and money that went into creating this beautiful set design, and then you just kind of have this filter over it. But look, I know that the millions and millions of fans of his were very excited just to see him performing again, and shout out to a successful performance, because in fact, I'm pretty sure that Billboard had some technical issues and the mix was pretty rough for some of the artists.
I will say that I did look, when I was watching the video back and stuff, the comments, people loved the song, like, and people loved the performance. I mean, it was overwhelmingly positive. So like, I feel like I'm in the minority, and it just might not just be, I just might have just caught the Travis Scott wave. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't. It's just not for me. But like, everybody seems to really think it was dope. They should have had Tyler the Creator on there.
Joel's over Travis Scott. I hear ya. Some people are just a little over him for a number of reasons. Seems like two different videos with two different budgets. That's very funny. I think so as well. But you know what? Art is art, and I think that was
Right.
his artistic expression. There was something about that particular, filter that he was loving. So hey, more power to him.
Cool. Yeah, people loved it overwhelmingly. So it's cool. And then other things that happened during it. I think you saw that. You kind of showed Mary J. Blige earlier. She got the Billboard Icon Award, which was given to her by my personal favorite pop artist, Janet Jackson.
Yeah, you were wearing a Janet Jackson shirt earlier today.
Yeah, I
He
had my
means
Janet
it
shirt on there.
when he says he's a big fan.
Oh, I have a lot of Janet Jackson shirts. I got Janet back there.
And my favorite line from Mary J. Blige saying, "Who's managing Mary J. Blige now? Me." That goes to this whole, every artist. It doesn't matter who you are or what stage you're at in your career. At some point, you're going to be taken advantage of. People are going to lie to you. They're going to take your money. They're going to try to get you to sign bad deals, or they will get you to sign bad deals. And obviously, I think that there was hints of that in her, not just that statement, but her entire acceptance speech.
Right.
She is a powerhouse. She is an icon. She is an influencer. And she deserves everything that she has because she built it herself. And I liked everything she had to say.
Yeah, no, and then I see Cody in there. The filter looked glitchy. I think that was my problem with the Travis Scott performance with it. It just like the filter just didn't even look like it was done very well. Like, I just wish it was done better. And then a couple of little things, other things to notice. Doja Cat won a bunch of stuff. She won the top R&B album, and then she won top R&B artist, top R&B female artist. And when she was getting her top R&B album, I saw a video outtake of her. She downed her drink, she hit her vape pen, and then she threw it down and she walked.
Yeah. No,
it was such a real moment.
I'm gonna show you guys for a second. So this is what she did right before she accepted. Drink down, vape pen, and she goes up. So amazing human moment for sure.
No, she's a legend for that clip. And then Morgan Wallan played his a couple of his songs, another controversial artist. It sounded like he was having a lot of sound problems to me, like his in-ears were going out. I actually did not think that. I've never seen any of his performances. I heard his record when again, I'm setting aside any kind of controversy and I'm just going on the artist. When his record came out, I skimmed it in Spotify, check out all the kind of new releases and stuff. I thought he was kind of a hit maker. And then, I had not heard anything live, and I got to tell you, I was kind of let down by live, but it could have been his ear-to-ear problems. for me, he was singing real harsh, and I just wasn't.
Yeah,
I was like,
and that was
wow.
some feedback that I was reading in different reviews of the performance. Obviously he's a great singer, but it was a little lackluster.
Yeah, yeah. But other, just top winners, Drake won a bunch of stuff as top artist, top male artist, BTS, favorite group, Taylor Swift, top 200 artist, The Weekend, R&B, Olivia Rodrigo was a huge winner. She won like 8 categories, man. It was crazy. I could be exaggerating, so don't hold me to that, but it's like it was something crazy. Kanye took the top Christian artist and top gospel artist. Um yeah, man. Like but controversial artist Morgan Wallen did get top country male artist. Megan Thee Stallion, top rap female artist. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it was pretty cool. And then this is the one that I have a question for, for the audience that's out there. So I saw the top rock artist was Glass Animals, and then they won for like top rock artist. And then they were in a category with Imagine Dragons, Machine Gun Kelly, Main Skin, and 21 Pilots. And I actually thought this was a very odd category because the fact that there was only one rock category is kind of, it just shows the state of music right now. But like, I honestly, I could say with 100% certainty that I don't listen to any of these bands, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Is this the top rock bands that are out right now? Like, because it just, they don't seem very rock.
But it even
Like,
goes back to specifically Billboard Music Awards, but a lot of these award shows, are they representative of, fan favorites, right? The top music, the top performing, right? Or is this all just kind of, whoever has the ins and the connections and the record label representation?
so somebody puts in there, Imagine Dragons is pretty good, right? Okay, so my comment is, I'm not saying whether they're good or bad. I'm just kind of saying, like, I would think, isn't would you consider them rock? I don't know. Everything I hear from them, they sound kind of like adult contemporary pop. They don't really sound
They've
rock
done some pop
to
stuff.
me.
I
And
feel,
21
tested the
Pilots definitely
waters.
doesn't.
Yeah, a little more mainstream pop, which is fine. I feel like we've seen a lot of these punk rock bands start to
I
teeter
guess you
more
could say,
center pop.
Machine Gun Kelly has a lot of guitars and stuff in it now because he's punk rock, but I don't know. I don't know. I have to be honest. I really honestly don't listen to a lot of new rock music, and when I do, it's not the mainstream stuff for sure. But I would like to see a little more representation. Somebody's got to innovate, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, so, there was a lot that happened, but we didn't have anyone storming the stages and no, fiascos, which is a good thing, right? So
Good.
we all kind of got through the Billboard Music Awards. We saw some cool performances and what more can you ask for? And in fact, so we had the Silk Sonic performs Love
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
Train.
yeah. Totally didn't even
Yeah,
mention that.
how can we not talk about that?
Yeah, Anderson .Paak and Bruno Mars as Silk Sonic. Like great. Those guys are great, man. I love that old vibe. That's the one thing that I really love about Bruno Mars is his kind of commitment to bringing that throwback sound into the mainstream, and he does it so well, and the Silk Sonic so well, and so classic sounding, yet like produced like right now, and it always sounds so big and so huge. The band sounded fantastic, so yeah, I mean, they're awesome.
Yeah, I know there's just something about seeing a bunch of very talented musicians and artists dance in syncopation.
Yeah,
It's obviously a continued art,
I
right?
got to
From
be
girl
honest,
groups and that kind of thing.
that performance felt more rock than, I don't know, like an Imagine Dragons to me. But that's just me. Just because there's just like the band kick. I don't know. It's good. It's good stuff.
All right, we got a super chat, guys. I appreciate the super
Oh, super
chat.
chat. Ooh,
Zarek
ooh.
Phoenix. Yeah, we need to come up with our super chat. Ring a
Yes,
bell or
super
something.
chat is available. We do definitely appreciate that. And to make sure that your comments get highlighted on the screen so she could see them, because sometimes they go by pretty fast. I don't know if she mentioned earlier, but we are on like 4 or 5 different platforms right now. So you could be watching on our YouTube channel, you could be watching one of the Facebook channels, you could be watching on LinkedIn right now. But make your way over to the YouTube Top Music Attorney page to and make sure you subscribe to that, because that's where we go first.
Yep. And guys, we're getting into this kind of, we're going to be going live 2 times a week. We had committed for this week. We're going to do Tuesday at 5, Friday at 5, and that's probably what we're going to do here on out. So 5 p.m. PST, make sure you're subscribed and turn on those bell notifications. That way YouTube will push out a little notifications when we do go live. But with that being said, we do need to now get into updates about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. That Orko, I'm going to kick you out of here. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you guys. Make sure you guys are subscribed on all platforms.
Thank you. See, that's what he does. That's why he's the show producer. Okay, so we're gonna bring in my very good friend and litigation attorney Tim Collier, and we're gonna get into a discussion about everything that we saw from Amber Heard, not only on cross examination today, but from yesterday as well. So, Tim, I'm gonna bring you in right now. All right. Hello.
Hello. How are we doing?
Doing just fine. So look, I don't know how much you were able to catch the last 2 days because you're actually, a real attorney as well. You run a law firm. You're a busy guy. I don't know about you, but I'm like trying to, handle legal work, but having, one ear in as I'm trying to listen. But, something that kind of stood out to me a little bit more today with Amber's cross-examination was the interaction with the questions and then how she would answer every time to the jury, right? So there'd be a question from Miss Vasquez, and then, Amber, instead of talking to the attorney, would turn and answer to the jury, which just was a little odd to watch. But again, as a litigation attorney, have you experienced that from a witness? And is it, good for the case?
Well, it's what the witness is instructed to do. So you want them to talk to the jury to try to make that connection. And it comes off awkward. We talked about that a little bit last time. But the witness does want to try to make that connection with the witness, or excuse me, with the jury. And the way to do that is to establish eye contact, look at them. But you're right, it kind of came off a little bit weird. I think it was over exercise today. And it probably didn't come off the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, well, and okay, so at the beginning of today, and we're going to be kind of going back and forth. I just have a bunch of notes from all kinds of things that stood out to me. But, at the beginning of today, the attorney brought out the knife that we've been talking about and we've heard about. We just haven't seen it until now. And so the knife that Amber Heard gave as a present to Johnny Depp. And so it's this, quite large, rustic looking weapon. And, the questions just had to do with, well, if you are a DV victim, is it normal or rational that you would give a weapon to your abuser? And, Amber's response to that was, well, I didn't think he was going to use that on me, but yes, he was, abusing me. And that's kind of where it kind of started and ended. But I thought having the physical knife out was impactful, right? So, talk to me a little bit about how often do you pull out an actual tangible exhibit so that you can show the jury?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's just documents and recordings like we've seen, but whenever you can get a good tangible piece of evidence like that, you often see that in a criminal trial, right? Where you see the gun or the knife or whatever. This is kind of a unique experience, but it brings it to life. It brings it real for that jury. It's like, wow, she really did do that. Here is the actual knife. And they'll get to look at that knife because it was admitted into evidence while they're deliberating. So they'll even get a closer look at it. So I think it brings home the point that the Depp team is trying to make, right? Is like, why would you give a knife to a killer or to an abuser?
Right. Right. We don't know about the killing just yet, but
Right.
it does seem
She is alive.
that some of the claims have evolved over time. Now, just a little trigger warning: we are going to get into talking about the sexual assault that did come up early today. So, if this is sensitive for you and you're watching it later, feel free just to kind of scroll forward. But we heard testimony having to do with the sexual assault that occurred, that Amber is alleging, and talking about that a bottle was used by Johnny to assault her. And then, of course, that she had, pretty significant injuries as far as cuts on her arms, vaginal bleeding. So, as far as just kind of recounting that story, that was, obviously a little tough to go through, right, as a viewer. But afterwards, there were some exhibits having to do with pictures, and there were pictures of mirrors or the bathroom mirror. And, Amber was talking about the writing on the mirror was from Johnny. Okay. And apparently this all had occurred after this famous, Johnny lost his finger. Now, Amber's claiming Johnny cut it off himself. Johnny's claiming it was severed when Amber threw a vodka bottle at him. But in any case, the writing on the mirror was both in black and as well as red, which we presume to be blood. So one of the questions that came up that kind of stood out to me was, Amber had an opportunity to take pictures of the mirror so we could see the writing. But, talking about these wounds and these injuries, she didn't take any pictures of those injuries. And so that was kind of interesting because she did take pictures. She did start to document the abuse as she alleges. So after something kind of that terrifying, why didn't she take any pictures?
Yeah, I mean that seems to fall flat, with us as we watch, but of course with the jury too, more than likely. And for somebody who took pictures of what seemed to be even the minor, injuries, all of a sudden didn't think to take them there, but take pictures of the surrounding area. This was an interesting moment. Usually when you have a victim on the stand like that, you go very soft. You're very compassionate, and we didn't see that today from Ms. Vasquez, and and that was part of the strategy. That's part of the reason why she's the person who is doing the questioning. And she wore white today, which is the universal color of the Me Too movement, at least over the past couple of years. And so clever move, I guess. You never want to take away from somebody's obvious abuse or experience, but from a purely legal perspective, it really does bring into question about what happened and what actually happened there. I think everybody understands that there's some embellishment on both sides happening here, but is that a large embellishment? Is that greatly exaggerated, or is there some truth to it? It's hard to tell, but I think what the defense team did today to cross-examine, they went a little harder than you usually see in some of these types of cases where you get into some sensitive areas. And I think that nexus was well thought out before the cross-examination by choosing who was going to do it and even the outfit choice today.
Yeah, and I did a little research on the attorney because I felt like she did a really good job today. I feel like she, as far as kind of controlling the witness, trying to keep them on track, and then the balance between having that assertiveness, right, to try to elicit the response that you're after, but to not seem like, I don't know, you're just insensitive, or you might turn off the jury, right? Because also we're talking about some of the objections that we heard, and the fact that on redirect, Amber Heard's attorney just could not get past just these objections that were just being fired at her over and over and over, no matter how much she kept trying to rephrase her question. So yes, I thought it was a very much a balancing act. But I looked up the attorney, and in fact, she's an associate at this law firm. So I think that because she's been so much highlighted in this trial as doing a really good job with her objections, I think her cross was really good, that this could be kind of making her career.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, she's going to be sought after this. I mean, this is a career moment for anybody just because of the stage, and the way that she's handled it has been very well. Agree with one side or the other. Her cross-examination has been methodical. It's been pointed. She uses the typical cross-examine tricks. There's been some follow-ups, I think. She doesn't accept the answer as something that she could. Well, she doesn't accept yes for an answer. This is a big problem with attorneys. I'll give you two quick examples. The first one was yesterday when she was asking Johnny about it, or asking Miss Heard about Johnny Depp's rings, and she said yes, she wears them essentially all the time or most of the time. And that she should have moved on right there. She dug in a little bit and she got an answer something less than yes, he wears them all the time. Well, that diminished her argument there a little bit. So she should have accepted the yes answer and moved on. She did the same thing today. She honed in on this article and started reading it line by line and said, "This is about Johnny." And Amber Heard answered yes, and then she kept digging in on that. Maybe that's just nerves or whatever, but accept those yes answers, and then bring that back around in closing. You got the answer you wanted, move on to the next topic. That's a win. So although she has done some really good work, she's given actually Amber Heard some wiggle room in which I think she should not have had.
Well, and explain, as far as being a litigation attorney, obviously I have some experience in this area too, but when you are in front of a jury in a courtroom, there's a lot of things happening simultaneously, particularly when you're doing a cross, right? Because, for example, we see that she seems to be checking something off. So she probably has a list of questions. So she's going through her line of questioning. She has notes about what exhibit she needs to call, right? And so she's trying to kind of continue this flow, right? Because that's another thing. You don't want to kind of break your flow. You want to keep things going. So talk about everything that's happening in that moment and how sometimes attorneys can get thrown off a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, Amber Heard, to her credit, is doing that a little bit. She's answering in a way that she wants to, and not, yes or no. So when you do cross-examination, they're not open-ended questions. The answers you should elicit are yes, no, maybe, and quite honestly, it doesn't even really matter what the answer is, because you, as the attorney, are doing the testimony, right? You're asking your questions in a way to develop your story and your theme. What the witness answer should be one-word answers each and every time. One of the things that Ms. Vasquez is not doing, and we saw maybe a little towards the end of today, but the judge should be stepping in to say, Ms. Heard, your answer should be yes, no, yes or no.
Yeah, we did hear that she was asking the judge, especially near the end of the day, multiple times, "Judge, please instruct the witness to just
Right.
answer," because then Amber would continue talking before there had been a ruling on an objection, for example.
Well, yeah, that's a big thing. But even in the normal course without an objection, it should be one word answers on your cross examination. They're close ended questions, yes or no. Is that correct? Did I read that correctly? Those types of things, because you're just displaying your case. And she's giving her a lot of wiggle room. You see her fight back a little bit, and interrupt Miss Heard, but she could ask for the judge's assistance, is my point, and say, Your Honor, can you instruct the witness to answer yes or no? And the judge will do that.
Yeah. Well, the real Cynthia, actually, let me bring you back on screen. Even though I hate Amber, she's doing better at cross than I thought she would. I anticipated that Amber was going to get a little rattled. And in fact, I'm finding that, she's staying very controlled, and her answers are very, I don't want to use the word calculated, but they are very thoughtful, right? In that she's being very careful not to elicit emotional responses. But she did earlier in this kind of, evolution, right? The first trial in the UK. So today we did see some video deposition, and this was from a few years back. I think it was 2018. So when she was providing testimony in response to an audio, and there was a fight that Johnny and Amber had, and they were talking about how I guess Johnny had run over her foot with the door, and in response Amber had struck Johnny. And so we heard that, and then her kind of explaining is, "Oh, I was just surprised and I hit him." But in that video deposition testimony, she was not quite as controlled as we're seeing today. And in fact, she was rolling her eyes and she was kind of smirking. And so when asked about that, as far as she just seemed to be not taking it seriously, and it was just so funny, apparently, is it funny to hit your husband? Was the question that we heard. Her answer was, "No, I was responding to the other people in the room." That didn't seem to be the case. I don't know if anyone was really buying that, but just the difference, and I think you even made this point, the difference between how she came off in her earlier video deposition versus how we're seeing her today.
Yeah, it's all credibility, right? I mean, how does she act in a circumstance where she's not being judged by 12 people? Where her claim is on the line, right? She didn't have a claim in that case, so she could be defensive, she could be herself. She didn't have a stake in the game, and so there's probably a little bit more real Amber Heard in those responses than what we're seeing on the stand. And does the jury make that connection? Does a couple of them? We only need one, and then somebody says it back in the deliberations, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, that's true. She was much different in that deposition than she was on the stand." So does that mean she's not telling the truth? Could lead some people to believe that. So, those are things that you can prepare a witness for, um, but you can't coach answers. So you have to walk that line and make sure that you don't cross that ethical obligation.
Now, there was one audio that we heard today, and it was over the course of several minutes, and it was kind of a yikes moment as I was listening. As far as I feel Amber and her team are trying to position that, of course, she is the victim in the scenario. She didn't participate in the abuse in any kind of way, and you have kind of a traditional DV situation with an abuser and the victim. But one of the audios that we heard today was Amber for several minutes, like really belittling Johnny Depp and laughing hysterically between some of these things, as she was being very taunting towards him. And so, again, back to are questions of, well, what does this mean? Does this mean that they were just mutually abusive, right? In one scenario, and is Amber just embellishing? So maybe, I don't know, she had these pictures of this red mark on her face. Maybe Johnny did smack her. Did he beat her in the face with his rings multiple times throughout many years? We haven't really seen that necessarily with pictures just yet, but did he snap at some point? But equally, we're not really seeing Amber in the best light, and that she's this helpless little victim in these audio recordings.
Yeah, I agree. And then you have these these audio recordings that just kind of show the nature of the relationship. I mean, incredibly toxic, right? And I think I've said this multiple times since this trial started, is they both lose. They both were just awful to each other. So as it comes to defamation, were each of them abusers? Well, I believe so. Will jury, that remains to be seen. But that means both of them lose, because there's truth in the comments that each of the parties made that they're suing on. One of the, I thought, best lines of questioning that Ms. Vasquez had actually heard, I believe, yesterday, where she would show pictures of that night at different events or the galas or whatever it was,
Yeah.
in which there was absolutely no sign of bruising, swelling, or anything whatsoever. I thought that was actually a very powerful line of questioning, and some of the pundits or talking heads on TV said, it would be okay if they stopped there, and I agree. That would have been a short cross-examination. If she would have stopped after that, she just Ms. Vasquez destroyed the credibility of Ms. Heard in that moment.
Yeah,
so I
and
think
what
that
was
would have been
notable
great.
too was also, Amber Heard's response to that, right? So, for example, it would be, well, wasn't this after he had hit you in the face, right? In one instance, and she goes, well, I was wearing makeup. And then, the question was, wouldn't you have, swelling, for example? And we're talking about maybe a broken nose. Well, ice covers swelling. And then Amber corrected herself, not covers, but it diminishes very quickly, swelling. And so as she was trying to just kind of explain away, it just was tough. It was very tough to believe what she was saying.
Right. Yeah, that's the art of cross-examination. Get them to admit it, or if they don't admit it, it looks absurd, so it's not believable. I mean, that is the art of cross-examination, and that was a prime example of just a very good line of questioning.
Yeah. Now let's talk real quick about yesterday. We heard a whole lot of questions having to do with whether she donated or pledged the $7 million. So Amber Heard, per the divorce settlement, was paid $7 million over, and what was supposed to be over multiple installments from Johnny Depp, of which was all supposed to be donated. And so, because we also saw yesterday an interview that Amber had done where, again, she reiterated after it appeared that they had been divorced, she had been in receipt of the money. Yes, I've donated the money. So the questions were, have you actually donated the $7 million? And it got a little sticky. Why did it get sticky, Tim?
Well, you're going to argue over pledged or donate, right? Now, Ms. Heard says she believes those to be synonymous. I don't. I think her words were clear. And I thought that although it took a while for Ms. Vasquez to get there, she finally nailed down the question. Have you donated $3.5 million to this entity? Have you donated $3.5 million to this other entity? And the answers were no. So she got there. It took her a while. It was argumentative, but she finally got the money questions in at the end.
Yeah, and in fact, later on, I guess Amber slipped a little bit. So she did ultimately say, "No, I haven't, donated the full $7 million, but I will." But later slipped about how much she's paid her lawyers, and I believe she said she's paid them $6 million so far. And so, I think for Johnny Depp's probably a lot more than that.
Yeah. Wow, man. I mean, to be retained on that, geez, it's like a one-case career.
No, I
And I
mean,
think
but that's what absolutely.
Right. Yeah, and I think the point I think actually you made in one of our conversations that about this off air is just the timing of when she retained those attorneys versus the actual payments for the divorce settlement. I think the months prior was the actual receipt of those monies. So there really was just no excuse not to donate those.
Yes, no, exactly. So Ryan, let's go into this really fast. Ryan had a comment. It's an easy case. The James Franco was caught in the elevator. So we did see the elevator footage today, which we have been long awaiting. It was already leaked prior to the trial, but it finally came up in that cross-examination. So we saw Amber Heard, and this was after an instance that she said that there had been abuse from Johnny Depp. So we see that while Johnny Depp's apparently out of town, James Franco comes over. They're in the elevator, going up to, the penthouse. And this was like before midnight. And, we see them just kind of like leaning on each other. So there were questions about that. So didn't you know Johnny Depp was out of town? As far as Johnny Depp being this control freak that is just accusing you of all these things, the fact that you have James Franco, who you had a sex scene with, allegation, allegation, allegation. So, from that, is that damning one way or another to, Amber Heard's case or defense?
It could be. I mean, again, it comes down to credibility. Was she really faithful? Was she really, was she invested in this relationship, as she said, those types of things, if she's going to bring another man up to the house. If I'm on Amber Heard's team, do I really want James Franco testifying on my behalf? I probably don't.
Do you think we're going to hear from him? He's on the witness list.
He is on the witness list. I would not be, well, I guess I would expect possibly the Depp team to really pull him in versus the Heard team. I mean, I would consider that if I was on Johnny Depp's team, and maybe they have, but to pull him in and said, hey, that's you in the elevator, right? And you were going up to my house, or Mr. Depp's house, and that's Miss Heard with you, right? By the way, no injuries, correct? All right.
Well, so Amber Heard, she said today, as far as what was happening, because we couldn't quite see, in the front, we just saw the back. And she had said that James Franco, I guess, had reached around and he was kind of like, oh, your poor face kind of thing. Because again, she had said that she had been abused. And so I think it would be interesting to hear because, today we did finally close the cross-examination and we did hear from Ioe Tillett Wright. And, as a video deposition witness. And so he was talking about the fact that he has been friends with Amber Heard as well as Johnny Depp and talking about building a real relationship with Johnny Depp in particular, and that they loved each other and that they had these great conversations. And so he really laid the groundwork in a believable way where I really think that this guy was friends with both Amber and Johnny. But then he went on to just say, no, but I heard them, essentially arguing one instance. I heard Amber scream. He got very emotional when he was recounting. And again, I found it very believable. But he didn't really see much other than that. He came over to the house after one incident. He saw a chunk of hair on the floor. So that's kind of what we heard today. So I'm curious are we going to have witnesses come and cooperate with Amber Heard on these instances of alleged DV?
Well, yeah, I think we're certainly going to see that. And of course, yesterday she talked about her best friend, Raquel, and I forget her last name, but, that would be a key witness for me if I'm sitting. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that would be, if I'm sitting on the jury and I don't hear that name called, before they close their case in chief, I'm going to ask myself why. Because that she was right there in the moment, it seemed like, probably almost the only witness that may have had a personal hands-on or personally experienced that in a moment, in one of those actual moments.
Well, and I have good news for you. So the last 20 to 30 minutes of trial today, they called Raquel. So it's by video deposition. So we're gonna hear from her.
All right. Well, and I'm preparing for my own trial coming up on Thursday. So I had to cut the TV off for a little bit today. So
that's right. I got you all the notes. So let's jump into a conversation about damages, right? So this is a hot topic. So even if one side wins, right, they have to show that they were damaged if they want to get paid. So in the case of Amber Heard's damages, they got into it today. And just to say, for example, you had Aquaman, you in fact were renewed, right? You got Aquaman 2. And Amber Heard was just talking about, well, I don't know how much I'm actually going to be in it. Hasn't been released yet. Right? They might edit me out a lot, which actually, I would believe it's probably not great to have her in the film at this point. But also she had a contract with L'Oreal, right? The makeup company that in fact was renewed. And so everything that at least I heard today was that there hasn't been a case where we can say, oh, I lost this film. Now, I think Amber Heard's reputation is absolutely in the gutter right now as far as, the general population. But is that the relevant period we need to look at?
Well, the question isn't, is her reputation ruined? Is whether or not the statements made by Johnny Depp's attorney ruined her reputation. It's those statements specifically. And, that's a tough case to make. And you're right. There seems to be not a whole lot missed here if she's being renewed and whatnot. And then conversely, when you looked at Mr. Depp's damages, in his case in chief, he brought on an expert. They, went through the spreadsheets. They looked at the previous contracts and, the other deals that he may have missed, and they came to an exact number. I mean, that's believable. It's a little existential in Miss Heard's case. Defamatory damages are incredibly hard to prove in the first right. You need to, I believe, especially in a case like this, you need to have experts. And well, we don't know if she's going to have one yet. Maybe she will, but at least this far, I say she needs one.
Yeah. So super chat, thank you very much. All these people saying they never saw injuries. All right, so that is in fact the case so far from all of Johnny Depp's witnesses. That's what we've heard the first 3 weeks of this trial. Have all say, I didn't see injuries, right? I didn't see Johnny abusing her. But that's kind of what Tim and I are talking about as far as now that we are in Amber Heard's case in chief, she has an opportunity to call whoever she wants. And so, for example, are we going to hear Raquel say, I witnessed abuse?
Yeah, that remains to be seen. I mean, I missed the testimony today. I don't know if they got there, but yes, I mean, she needs to come forward and say she witnessed, or some sort of witnesses need to come forward and say they did experience some things. But to the credit, I guess, of the Heard team, I mean, I think there's been some abuse proven, and maybe it doesn't rise to the level as she explained. So the question becomes, well, is a jury going to do what the juries do? I mean, they can follow the law and say, okay, yes, there was some abuse here, so there's some truth to her statement, so therefore, Johnny Depp's claim loses, and vice versa. Or is a jury going to do what they sometimes do and ignore the law and say, she lied to us for a week straight, let's give Johnny the 50 million. I mean, that stuff happens. Juries are so unpredictable. And there are ways to handle that if you're an attorney, but still, are they going to hold it against her, or are they going to follow the instructions that they'll be given at the end? Again, remains to be seen, but that'll be interesting.
Now, someone I'm looking for. Oh, that's right. American King had a question. Depp's claim defamation, I think, is finished. He can't prove malice. Is malice an element of the claim?
Yeah, it is, and at least in this defamation or under these claims, I've heard them say that a couple times, and I meant to look up the actual statute in Virginia, but generally speaking, there are two types of defamation. There is, I guess, your vanilla defamation, if you will, where, it's just, you make a statement that's false, and you either knew it to be false or it was in reckless disregard of the truth. That's your level one, if you will, defamation. Whereas the second level is, and where you can probably get more damages, including punitives, is if it was done with malice or some other higher level of intent. And that is one of the claims, at least, that Mr. Depp is bringing in. They have to prove malice.
So, Blanca, I think that's a fair, claim, and we should hopefully, hear that in the closing, as far as if we're questioning these pictures that we're seeing and saying, well, if, for example, you've been struck in the face by someone who is, let's say, equal-sized or a little bit bigger than you, who is wearing rings multiple times, wouldn't the severity be represented in those photos, such as black eyes, such as the broken nose that we've heard you testify to? The other issue that came up today is that they were asking about medical records, right, following the sexual assault. After you were sexually assaulted, you had vaginal bleedings and cut on your arms. Did you seek medical care? There's not a single medical document in existence because you didn't. Why didn't you seek medical care? Now, that's not a slam dunk, right? We know that DV victims sometimes will not seek medical care, or if they do, they'll lie about it. But I think that was important, as far as if you were going to document with pictures, if you were going to take these steps, why didn't you document the extremity of it, or, to the degree that it actually occurred? So I know that's a question in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, and it's a good question on a lot of people's minds. I mean, she did document so many different things. I mean, obviously we have private recordings, pictures, those types of things. So why not this one area? I think her testimony, if you can kind of overlay it over all these instances, is that she was trying to protect Johnny Depp, and that falls flat for me, because why would you do all these other things but not this one thing? I don't know, but yeah, I think she loses some credibility in that area.
Yeah, and this goes back to, again, we've heard conflicting testimony from, the applicable medical workers who did not report, any injuries of this degree. So let's move in now to, we had redirect. Okay, so after cross-examination, then Amber Heard's attorney, Ms. Brendenhoff, had an opportunity to get back up and clear the record. Okay, so this is where Ms. Brendenhoff started to run into some issues because she was getting objection after objection after objection, and she just couldn't get past, Ms. Vasquez, to be honest. But we also heard Ms. Vasquez continuously saying this is inappropriate, Your Honor, because Ms. Brendenhoff would start to respond and argue rather than kind of sidebarring. Right. So she would say, well, Your Honor, we're trying to show this. Well, Your Honor, we're trying. And so what's inappropriate about that?
Yeah, so a talking objection in front of the jury is absolutely inappropriate. So you usually are limited to a one-word objection, um, um, beyond the word objection, the category. And if there's any sort of argument that you need to make or want to make, then you ask for a sidebar, and the judge will almost always give it to you. But when you argue those types of things outside or in front of the jury, first of all, you're giving the jury the proffered evidence that may not be admitted, and so now they have that to consider when the objection may have been sustained. So incredibly inappropriate.
Yeah, so that did come up, and Ms. Brendenhoff was getting visibly and audibly very frustrated. And I think that's why she started to kind of lose her cool and was arguing with even the judge after the judge had ruled that she would still argue with the judge.
Yeah, I love
And
the
the
judge.
judge,
She's like, I've sustained the objection. That's her
yeah,
her
and we
MO.
talked about that. She's pretty even keeled. We've had maybe one little moment, previously where maybe she kind of showed a little more personality, but I do like to see that, right? I don't want to see some kind of bias starting to come through.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and that one moment I believe you're speaking of with respect to like the time or whatever, that was done outside the presence of the jury. I think if I'm reading your mind correctly, which is probably impossible to do.
You never know. You never know. All right. So then on redirect, the question of, as far as how did you get the job? Because we heard, Johnny's team basically saying Amber only got the Aquaman opportunity, which is the biggest blockbuster opportunity of her career because of Johnny Depp. So on that redirect, the attorney said, so how'd you get Aquaman? And Amber Heard said, I auditioned. Which,
Yeah,
hey, there you go. But, did Johnny Depp make a phone call on her behalf? Probably.
yeah. Well, and she answered the same way on Cross, right? She said, no, I auditioned. I thought that was actually just a pit to not need to go in. That was just dumb for the Depp team to even bring up. Who cares? It's better for their case that she got it.
Yeah. There was an endearing moment for me. So in the slew of objections that were occurring, I saw at the table, of course, there were two other attorneys seated next to Ms. Vasquez, and she was, of course, firing a lot of these objections herself. But there was a male attorney who was kind of whispering objections as well, and she was like, kind of looking at him and then saying them on top of hers. It reminded me of times that you and I have been in court, and you were kind of giving me some objections.
Yes, yes.
The good
It's
old
tough.
days.
Yes, it's tough to listen to all that stuff and then get out the right objection, and you got to get it out right then. So
You
sometimes,
do.
yeah, sometimes people think the hardest part is the questioning. Sometimes it's just listening, and is that an appropriate question? Is it not? I got 1.3 seconds to say yes or no. So it can be intense. It's on all the time.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to as far as, what's it like when especially when you're doing that cross-examination, because you're trying to not break flow. So in the middle of trying to make sure you know where you're at and you're questioning and you got to get the exhibit, and then now there's an attorney yelling an objection. So you have to think about it for a sec and say to the judge why, for example, it should not be sustained. And so there's a lot of very fast thinking analysis that has to happen as you're going. But, as you get, let's say, a bad response from the witness, and trying to strategize how to reword it or how to reapproach it. So it's definitely an art form.
Yeah, and I mentioned this before. I think Heard's attorney, and her name I forget now, but the main attorney who's done most of the
Yeah,
questioning.
Miss Brendenhoff.
Yes, and the way she phrases her questions draws a lot of objection. I think she could overcome that. And we all do it. We all get in a situation where we ask a bad question, but there's a way to get around that, and get to the point. And she's just not getting there, and she's getting overly frustrated. And you can
Yeah.
see that's why the Depp team has continued to use this strategy, which quite frankly is not a good strategy in most trials because the jury gets really upset about it.
Yeah. Okay, so for the last little piece of this, I had said we did get a tiny bit into Raquel. I'm not going to touch on any of it because it was so quick, and we can do that on our next recap video. But I do want to talk about Ioe. I believe that's how you say his first name. So this was a photographer. Again, I had mentioned previously, this was someone that met Amber on a project. They became very good friends. And then, he ended up becoming friends with Johnny as well. And so as far as kind of like the firsthand knowledge of being their close friends, something he testified to that stood out is that he said Johnny Depp has a marijuana closet with pounds and pounds of weed. So again, a little, behind the scenes look and the life of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. but talking about the drug use that he observed from not only Johnny but also Amber Heard, a lot of alcohol, and we do seem to be hearing that Amber also did a fair amount of her own drugs and drank a fair amount as well. And I don't think that, that needs to be shadowed in any way.
Yeah, well, obviously the reason why they're bringing that up is just because, Amber has said, on one hand, I don't accept this and it's not appropriate, Johnny's certain use to certain substances, but yet
Right.
she kind of has, her own little, holiday or her own little, I guess, issue, if you will, or, obviously she's done plenty of drugs. So, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, why are we even bringing this up? I mean, nobody has yet shown me that the drug abuse or drug use, however you want to characterize it, leads to abuse in this relationship. I just haven't made that connection. Now, others may have seen that connection, but I just haven't seen that quite yet.
It felt like in the beginning it was by implication, right? So that Johnny Depp would lose control of his faculties and maybe he just didn't know what he was doing. He couldn't remember. But as the case has gone on, it seems like it's almost becoming he just would pass out. He'd be so out of it, he didn't know what he was doing, right? And that goes to your point of, well, how does that lead to abuse?
Right. Yeah, and it might even be counteractive. So, at some point, I think it just doesn't matter. It's the question is there any evidence of abuse? And I think there is here, at least in my opinion. If I'm on that jury, and from what I've seen, I think there's abuse that goes both ways. And being compassionate to the victims all out there and what they've endured for the purposes of this case, I mean, it's just defamation. So the question is, was there abuse? If so, both claims fail. And I think we're going to go through 6 or 7 weeks of this, 7 weeks total, 6 weeks in trial. And I think it's already been decided more than enough. I mean, they're just airing dirty laundry at this point.
Yeah. Do you think, could they move for a directed verdict at this point? So meaning, Johnny's counsel?
I believe they did that. I usually
They
do
did.
that. Yeah, they do that between case and chief. So yeah, you could do that. The court.
would you? Do you think that there's been enough? We've heard enough. Jury, judge, let's do this.
Yeah, well, directed verdict is you're asking the judge, not the jury. So you're asking the judge that, as a matter of law, they have not proven their claims. So that's tough. That means essentially there can't be a question of fact because that's what the jury is, a trier of fact. And so they have to essentially come up with some sort of definition of abuse because that generally isn't in a jury instruction unless somehow the attorneys agree to a definition. And if there is abuse going in either direction, then there's probably some truth there. So I think there's still some factual issues there. So I think the judge was right not to do a directed or to grant the motion for a directed verdict. And quite frankly, it's much tougher in tort cases than it is in like contract style cases to get a directed verdict to that end.
Okay, so final thoughts. I feel that at the close of Amber Heard's testimony that I feel like she might be losing the jury. I feel like there was just enough of not only ouch moments, of course, from the evidence itself, but just in the way that she was responding or the way that she was trying to explain away, instances of her just very clearly antagonizing Johnny or being kind of abusive in her own way. And again, not to say that Johnny didn't do bad things and that Johnny, that there isn't a semblance of truth, but it does just feel like what Amber's saying is, at best, she's embellishing quite a bit. And those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and I agree with those thoughts. You have the attorneys have the benefit of the court of public opinion, and you've got to be curious of whether or not that opinion is the same with the jury. And there are polls out there that, like some as high as 90%, that the cross-examination of Ms. Heard was just incredibly effective. So as an attorney, you have to think of, okay, at this point, I may not have a chance at my $100 million claim. My risk is whether or not the jury is going to find for Johnny Depp on his claim. And so what they need to do is do as much as they can is to corroborate Ms. Heard's testimony and try to essentially rehabilitate her testimony through other corroborating witnesses. And if they can do that, maybe they gain some stuff back.
Okay, and we have a final super chat. Thank you very much. So, have we seen Rakita's law stream on the trial? There's a panel of lawyers giving opinions. Very nice. Yeah, there's a couple of channels that I'm keeping an eye on. I'll be sure to check this one out as well. Where Tim and I both have law firms, so we're doing our best to keep track of this. But like I said, I am definitely glued in one ear to listening to this. So I'm gonna keep on it. Tim, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to let you get out of here. You got to go prep for your own trials, but I appreciate you being on the live stream, and we will definitely be checking in with you again very soon.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tim. All right, guys, we covered a lot. Thank you very much for the super chats. Thank you very much for the engagement. It's been cool to get to see a lot of familiar, I guess, icons, a lot of familiar faces via the icons. If you haven't already, be sure to follow on, social media. Of course, Top Music Attorney. It's the same at Top Music Attorney for all profiles. If you want to follow for more of the music, fun stuff, follow Miss Krystle live and here on YouTube. If you happen to be watching on Facebook, on LinkedIn, make sure you come over and join our community here because we're really, starting to build our family. And, it's been amazing to meet you guys. So thank you, That Orko, for joining us a little bit earlier. We're going to be back on Friday at 5 p.m. PST. I'm sure we'll do a little update about what's going on with the trial and some other wonderful newsy things. Love your faces. Have a wonderful rest of your night. I'm out of here. Top Music Attorney. See you on the next one.